cheap. I can say it. My mother, when I was a kid, my mother would never buy any name brand foods. Never a name brand. You know, be in the supermarket. Ma, could we get some Jif peanut butter? You got some Jif money? Never a name brand. You know what my mother used to buy all the time? The no frills food. You ever see the no frills food? The white box with the black letters? Just say rice. No uncle, no riverboat, just rice. You get what you pay for. You are getting rice. You look at the back of the box for ingredients and say, look at the front of the box. You want some cereal? White box, black lettuce cereal. Ain't no captain on this ship. Nothing lucky about these chums. All you are getting is cereal. You know what the cheapest thing my mother ever bought? The cheapest thing was the peanut butter with the jelly in the same jar. Peanut butter with jelly, and how low can you go? Peanut butter with jelly, that's like buying a shoe with a sock sewed inside.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Apollo Wednesday, February the 18th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, motivation, meditation, and Apollo. All that and more when I get back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now, Varney and Company.
Thanks for joining us. Have a great Wednesday. Varney and Company picks it up. Stu, take it away.
All right. Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. Here comes the money. The president negotiated large-scale payments as part of trade deals. Now the money's on the way. Japan has pledged to invest $36 billion in U.S. oil, gas, and critical mineral projects. Let's get to the markets. A very modest bounce for stocks this morning. Maybe investors like the money coming in from Japan. Maybe they're also a little disappointed at the downside move in durable goods orders. What we've got is the Dow up maybe 30, 40, S&P up 13, and the Nasdaq about 64 points higher. Now look at interest rates holding at slightly lower levels. The 10-year coming in at 4.07 this morning. The The 2-year, well below 3.5%. You're looking at 346. No joy for Bitcoin, though. Still range-bound at 67.2. Gold, just below $5,000 an ounce. It is up $70 this morning. Silver, $76 an ounce, and that, too, is up about $3. Oil, $63 a gallon. No, barrel, that is. And regular gas, that is averaging $2.92 a gallon. All right, politics. Vice President J.D. Vance outlined the GOP's economic plan for the midterms. He says America can do better. He also called AOC's bumbling performance in Munich embarrassing. No breakthroughs in the 3-hour talks between the United States and Iran. The president has laid down some red lines which the Iranians have failed to acknowledge. Iran's carried out military drills in the Gulf. Their policy seems to be to keep talking and act tough. How much patience does the president have? Zuckerberg takes the stand in the trial that could reshape social media. Instagram and Facebook are accused of intentionally hooking and addicting young people. Previously, Zuckerberg had apologized publicly to victims. In New York, Mayor Mandani says if he can't raise taxes on the rich, he will raise property taxes by almost 10%. What does he think that will do to rents? He's also spending $1.2 billion on migrants. We will show you a list of Democrat frontrunners for the nomination in 2028. They have one thing in common. They would all raise taxes. It is Ash Wednesday, the 18th of February. The 40 days of Lent start today.
And that was Stuart Varney. Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, motivation.
Somebody in your family gonna die. Somebody in here gonna get fired. Somebody here gonna get an eviction notice. Somebody gonna get laid off. Somebody company gonna close. Somebody you love gonna break up with you. That's life. Life will test you like that? How positive can you be now? That's gonna happen to you in life. But what you gonna do about it, though? Adversity introduces a man or woman to themselves. Your character is put to the test when your back is against the wall. The pressure in your life right now has a purpose. It's not crushing you. It's pushing what's on the inside of you out. That's when you find out what you're made of. Things are going to happen to us. And we have the opportunity to make a decision. We make a decision, and our decisions make us. If you decide to make a decision because something happened and you ran out of money or you didn't get the support that you thought you would get, and you stopped, then you've decided, I'm willing to settle for a life of mediocrity. But you can also make a decision. Even if you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, even if no one else believes that you can do it, even if the odds are stacked against you, even if your chances of survival are slim to none, that you are not going to quit, that you're going to continue to move forward, that you're going to find a way to win. You never know how strong you are until being strong is your only choice. And you're strong. Every human has what it takes to get past whatever they're going through. If they decide to. You can get through this. Because you're bigger than this. You're tougher than this. And when you get to the other side, you're going to be better. You're going to be bigger. You're going to be bolder. You just got to work a little harder. You just got to press a little deeper. And I know you can beat it. And I know you have what it takes. I know you have that warrior inside. When you like that lion, when they're tired, when they're frustrated, when they're ready to give up, when they spent their last dime, that's when they get started. That's when it's showtime. We turn tragedy into triumph. That's what lions do. Lions don't cry. Lions don't give up. Lions don't quit. Lions hunt. That's what we do for a living. You will lose the fight if you get too emotional. Because when you're emotional, you're not rational. And winning comes from strategic thinking. You got to decide that you're going to be in control of you, that you're standing up for your life. Quit waking up thinking you ain't got no say-so in your life. You have a choice in this matter. You can't stop what happened to you, but you can doggone sure do something about what happened to you. Life is 10% what happened to you, is 90% what you do about it. You can grind your way through it, or you can cry your way through it. If you can grind your way through the hell, I'm telling you, it's gonna come to pass. I can stay down, or I can get my ass up, and I'm in the getting up business. I made up in my mind. I will not go through this pain and not get a reward for it. I will not surrender. I will outlast every trial and every tribulation that comes in my life. It's not how smart you are. It's not how strong you are. It's how much you can outlast up. And in the midst of hell, and in the midst of trials, and in the midst of tribulations, I shall rise. Sometimes I fall short, sometimes I struggle, sometimes I'm not my best, but I tell you one thing, I will not fold, I will not quit, I will not surrender to anything in this world. I'm going to keep going until I tap out. I have no choice. I will not complain. I will not worry. I will find a way when there is no way. I will make a door when there is no door. I will create finance when there is no finance. I will find an opportunity when it doesn't exist. You've got to learn how to become resourceful. You've got to learn how to become creative. There's a way that you can begin to handle this. There's a way out here somewhere. There's a solution. Where there's a will, there's a way for me to begin to create a way out of no way. Take the initiative. Learn something new. And just make up your mind and expect things to get better for you. If you can just keep hope alive, you can make it. What would your future be like if you decided to want that which you desire so strongly that it prepares you past your fears, that you experience the fear and do it anyway? What would your life be like? Start working and developing yourself now and prepare yourself for what it is that you want, because you expect to get it. We need to have a mindset that no matter what the challenges are, we will not be worn down. We will not quit. We will not surrender. We will not give up. We are smarter than every problem, and we have a solution for it. I will not be defeated because I know what my desires are, and I know what I deserve. So the difference between the weak and the strong is that when the strong have no more left, they fight the weak. When they have no more left, they quit, they give up, and there's nothing weak about you.
And that was Motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you, and now some meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you, and now, Apollo.
2. The last Apollo flight lifted off from Pad 39A at midnight on December 7th, 1972. It was the only Saturn V ever launched at night. Many of those who witnessed it said it was the most beautiful launch, an explosion of light that brought a false dawn to the Florida sky, a column of fire that was visible from as far away as North Carolina to the north and Cuba to the south. Apollo 17 was commanded by Gene Cernan, veteran of Gemini 9 and Apollo 10, the only man besides Jim Lovell and John Young to go twice on a lunar journey. His simp was Ron Evans, and his limp was Jack Schmitt, a geologist with a PhD and the only scientist to be on an Apollo crew. The command module was named America, the lunar module Challenger. On the early afternoon of December 11th, Cernan and Schmitt landed Challenger in the valley of Torres Litro. 75 hours later, at 4:54:37 p.m. Houston time, December 14th, 1972, they left the lunar surface and rendezvoused with America for an uneventful last journey home. As Apollo 17 approached the Earth, the people of Apollo observed the end of the program in characteristically different ways. Max Faget and Cadwell Johnson barely noticed. Both of them were still at MSC, both of them still doing what they had always done best, working in tandem, designing flying machines. Faget was still as blunt and opinionated as ever, Johnson still as ornery. By the end of 1972, they had been living in the world of the space shuttle for 3 years already. Apollo was part of their past. Apollo wasn't history for Don Arabian over in Building 45. He was still running the MUR for the final shift of 17. But in these final hours of the first lunar era, he was supervising a huge gumbo party. Over the past few flights, as the crises and anomalies became fewer, life in the MUR had become too tame for his taste. To liven things up, he had started a lunch competition. Each day during a flight, a table was set up in Arabian's office, and the designated engineer, who may never have so much as heated a can of beans, prepared or had sent in the menu of his choice. As time went on, the competition grew intense. Some opted for the outre. One lunch had consisted primarily of enormous banana splits. Sid Jones had arranged for music and candlelight. Now, for the landing of 17 and the last lunch, Arabian had taken charge and decreed that they would have gumbo, not just for the dozen who usually were invited to the lunches, but for everyone in the MUR, plus assorted invitees from Building 30, about 200 people in all. Fulton Plausch, a Louisianan from the cryo and fuel cell post in the MUR, was named chef. The Crew Services Division contributed 2 gigantic pots. Jack Kinsler's Tech Services Division made up some wooden stirring paddles. Plausch began with a chicken and sausage gumbo, but people in the MUR also contributed deer sausage, ducks, rabbits, squirrels, and anonymous game that became the subject of grisly rumor. By the time Apollo 17's command module was approaching the entry interface, a line of people waiting to get their rice and gumbo and ice cream snaked around the MUR. Owen Maynard, the Canadian who had driven his family down to remote Langley and the Infant Space Task Group 13 years earlier, was at Raytheon's plant in Sudbury, Massachusetts. Maynard had left NASA in hopes that he could do something on the outside to push the space program forward, to get some exciting new Apollo going. Joe Shea, now head of engineering for Raytheon, had heard that Maynard was available and recruited his old ASPO colleague to join him, putting him to work on a breathtaking project, designing a solar-powered satellite, a monster with wings covering 25 square miles that would generate up to 50 gigawatts of electricity on Earth. Maynard didn't watch the splashdown. From the time of Alan Shepard's first Mercury launch, he had never watched any of the flights live. Maynard didn't like to admit it to anyone, but to watch them live was an agony of worry and suspense for him. He got very emotional about these things. Some of the others at the Sudbury office crowded around a television, but not Maynard. He kept to his office and his drafting table. Bob Gilruth was in the viewing room behind the Mooker. Early in the year, he had stepped down as MSC's director to take a job as Director of Key Personnel Development for NASA. a pleasant way to end a historic career. Gilruth shared Maynard's apprehension during missions, however, and he was glad to see Apollo come to an end without having lost an astronaut in flight. He had never been enthusiastic about the H and J missions anyway, thinking that the risks of lunar exploration were awfully high. He still hoped that NASA would concentrate on a space station, a project that had been his personal favorite since the Space Task Group began. Scott Simpkinson, still MSC's gypsy, had most recently spent 3 months in Huntsville, sitting on the contractor selection board for the Space Shuttle's solid fuel boosters. Simpkinson was about to spend a year at Langley helping to prepare the unmanned Viking mission to Mars, but today he was taking his last shift as manager of Span, where he had been for all of the Apollo missions. The end of Apollo didn't bother him. Simpkinson had never been sorry to see anything end. He figured there was always something better going on somewhere else. In the Mocher, as the clock moved past 1 p.m. and the spacecraft America approached entry, Flight Neil Hutchinson was presiding over a nominal landing. The room was crowded, as was usual for a landing, and the viewing room was full, but the atmosphere was relaxed. They had done this many times now. Rocco Petrone watched from his post in the fourth row. Petrone's star was still rising. He had recently learned that in January he would move to Huntsville and replace the retiring Eberhard Ries as Marshall's center director. At this moment, however, Petrone was not looking ahead. He couldn't even concentrate fully on the present landing. For Petrone, it was a moment for remembering. It seemed a very long time since he had been an Army major sitting with Al Zeiler in a car in the rain outside the Cape Canaveral cafeteria, trying to make out John Kennedy's words through the static. The years in between had been unforgettable ones, and Petrone felt a wave of nostalgia as he watched the television image of America descending under its parachutes. No matter what happened to the space program in the future, it could never be like this again. As was his habit, Petrone thought in terms of history. Any number of pilgrims might follow, but there could be only one Columbus. At 1:24:59 Houston time on the afternoon of Sunday, December 20th, 1972, Apollo 17 splashed down in the Pacific 4 miles from the carrier Ticonderoga. Counting from Apollo 8's launch on December 21st, 1968, the first age of lunar exploration had lasted exactly 4 years. After the splashdown, the geologists in their back room watched the recovery operation for a while, some of them lighting up cigars in the tradition of the flight controllers in the Mocher. They eventually drifted away, exchanging goodbyes with Dick Coos, who stayed behind to finish up some post-flight paperwork. They were just getting good at this lunar surface business, Coos thought. It had taken time because you never knew exactly what the terrain was going to be like or what the astronauts would discover. Lots of improvisation was required. But by Apollo 17, Coos had become quite adept at determining where the astronauts were and coordinating with his scientists where and how they should proceed next. It was too bad that they had to stop now, just as they were getting the hang of it. Coos walked out into the high corridor of the control center, his footsteps echoing in the quiet. On impulse, he stopped at the door of the Mocher and walked in. Everyone had gone to the splashdown party, leaving the Mocher's consoles littered with books, logs, checklists, headsets, and ashtrays filled with cigarette butts and half-smoked cigars. Some of the controllers had left behind the little American flags that everyone waved when the spacecraft splashed down. Coos climbed the steps to the flight director's console and looked out over the deserted room. The big screens at the front of the room were black. The controller's CRTs showed no flickering columns of numbers, no messages about the health and welfare of men and machines in deep space. They were just small, turned-off television screens. The banks of caution lights were dark. There were no murmuring voices on the headsets. There was no sound at all anywhere in the room. It was as perfectly silent as the plains and valleys 240,000 miles away, where 6 descent stages sat. Strange to think of them still up there, Coos reflected. Even the footprints. Strange to think that men might return to those places to look at footprints made by Neil Armstrong or Pete Conrad or Gene Cernan. It was stranger yet to think that this was the end of it all. From the balky Mercury trainer that Coos couldn't get to work in the spring of 1961 to this. And it had all happened in less than the time it was taking his daughter, born early in Apollo, to reach adolescence. It had come and gone too fast. John Aaron, that philosopher of the Moker, would say later that it was like gulping good wine. It would have been nice to have had more time to savor it, he said, but we drank the wine at the pace they handed it to us. Today they had drunk to the bottom of the glass. There would be Skylab and eventually the shuttle, but Dick Coos, like Rocco Petrone, understood that an Apollo came only once, and he felt immeasurably sad. Coos walked slowly down the steps and out into the corridor, closing the door behind him.
And that was Chapter 30, Part 2 of Apollo by Charles Murray and Catherine Bly Cox. Next week is the epilogue. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you're not neutral and that the government has no rights.